That's always
All right, we're
that's
recording.
always the hard thing for me is remembering to hit record. I just get going into the class and totally forget.
Right. Well, good thing we hadn't like dived in too deep yet.
Right. We do have the opportunity to send out previous class recordings, and I will put my email address into the chat because I do have them kind of held aside, so I can send those out. It just won't be for a couple of days. So once we get everybody in, I will go ahead and add my email address. Well, hello, Uma from India, but in Australia. That's maybe the
Wow.
Magellan Award.
Wow.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, that's great. Thank you for joining in.
Hmm.
North Dakota, welcome to you, Letitia. All right. So I am going to ask everybody to remain muted throughout the duration of the class. If you do have a question and you need to have it answered right away, you can please unmute, ask your question. But more likely than not, I'm going to ask everybody to put your questions in the chat, mostly because everybody can see the chat, and then if they have the same question, they'll know, and we won't double up on those questions. So you can open up your chat and then just type in direct message everyone in meeting, type in your question, and then periodically we'll check the questions and see what's going on down there. But there will be time at the end of the class as well. So don't feel like you have to get it answered right away. We can totally wait till the end too. Just kind of depends. All right, just another couple minutes. We have a lot of people participating this evening, which is wonderful. Our new class schedule for the co-op has just been announced and is available on our website and on Eventbrite. So if that's how you found us, then you can go to Eventbrite and look up Whole Foods Co-op and you'll see more of our spring quarter classes, or you can go to wholefoods.coop/classes, so our website, and join the classes that way. And so we, again, will have Stacy's classes through June. We also offer cooking classes for both adults and children. We offer movement classes like Qigong, Sundo, and yoga, 2 different kinds of yoga classes. And then we also have other health and wellness classes and general interest classes, gardening, composting, waste comprehension, all sorts of different things. So you can find all of those classes, again, listed on our website, and they're going to continue to be free, and they're going to continue to be virtual. And that's going to be until this coming fall, unfortunately. We're just playing it safe as far as the COVID thing goes. So if you're in the area and want to join us in the fall, that'd be awesome. But we will continue to have a virtual element with each class too. So if you like taking our classes and you're from outside of the area, you'll be able to continue to see us that way. So let's see. I'll put, again, my email address in the chat as well as our website address, so you guys can make note of that. And we're going to go ahead and get going here in just another moment. There was one more thing I wanted to add, and I can't remember what it was. Oh, well, I'm sure I'll remember it later. Danielle, we are in Duluth, Minnesota. So we have 2 locations, and we have classes offered at both locations, downtown Duluth and in West Duluth. Hello, Anita in Buffalo, New York. My mom was native of Tonawanda, so that's kind of cool. Oh, that's what I was going to mention. I see my screen is frozen, so hopefully y'all can still hear me.
We can.
Perfect. Okay. If you are having difficulty with your video or the audio, video freezing, audio not working, whatever, leave the meeting. I'll get you back in. That should help fix the problem. So if any of you are experiencing any issues like that, go ahead, leave the meeting. You can come back in. We'll let you in. So that being said, thank you again, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Stacy, for another wonderful class. I know it's going to be chock full of information, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So take it away, Stacy. Introduce yourself and tell us what we're going to be learning tonight.
All right. So welcome to class 5 of our series here of Herbalism for Beginners. Today I'm going to show you my herb shop. I'm going to show you how I store things, how I prepare things. We're going to make a salve, and I'm going to show you how to make a tea bag out of a coffee filter, so you can have a good portable, easy way to take tea with you or share it with somebody else. And I am really looking forward to just sharing my space with you. We talked about forms of herbal application. That's the title of this segment. And so what we'll do during the course of showing you how I store things and prepare things is talk about the list of applications. And I'll share the handout up on the screen when we get that far. And then we'll talk about the herb of the day that we're going to use when we make our preparation. So let's get started. So behind me, you can see my closet of dried herbs. This is the way. Now, I don't have a computer that I can use the camera, so I'm going to talk and then kind of show you stuff so that I don't lose my voice behind the screen when I'm showing you. Basically, I'm going to display. This is just the entrance. So I just turned the entryway of this house when I moved into it into my herb shop. So the double door closet that would normally host shoes and boots is where I have turned into my herb storage. A lot of my storage ideas and the way that I organize things came from my mentor, Margie Flint. One of the first times I went to her space for a clinical practice retreat and learning, I was just blown away by the way she had her place set up. I came home and immediately redid mine. So basically what I have in here is all the dried herbs. You can see there, that's for me. And if you look closely, let's see, what we have, common name, and then the Latin name, and then the date of when it was dried and stored. So you want to think about doing that on all of your containers, whether it's a dried herb or a tincture or an oil or anything that you're making. You always want to have the common name that you're familiar with, the Latin name, so you're sure you're being specific when you're recommending and offering herbs to people, and that they learn that so they can go ahead. You can find information that's accurate out there, and then always dating your things. It's really good when you're making products and stuff like that, and you might have 2 or 3 jars out on the cupboard if you're making a blend, to put the labels on both the lid and jar. So that's just a little tip over the years, because then when you get done and you're trying to put things back away and you're like, so then you don't have to get out new lids and do that. I also in here keep the tinctures that are in the process of being made. So over in this corner I have, these are tinctures that are various herbs, and we'll talk about how we make these here. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to fill up the jar loosely packed. If it's a dried root or bark, you're going to fill it up a little less. This was actually filled up only halfway.
Hey, Stacy, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Your microphone's going in and out.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
All right. I'll try. It's probably because I'm wiggling.
It could be.
All
Yeah,
right.
it's also sometimes if you turn the laptop away from you, the microphone doesn't catch as well. So
Yeah, I'll try
it's
and
really a
talk.
combination.
Yeah, I'll talk to the screen and then try and turn and show things. Just
That
reminded
works.
me. Um,
Yep.
so with roots and barks, you're going to want to add less to the jar because as they expand and absorb and rehydrate, they're going to fill the jar up more. So once you get your jar with the herb in it, you're going to fill the rest of it up all the way to the top with whatever you're making the tincture out of, whatever you're going to use as the menstruum. These are mostly alcohol tinctures. I think I have 2 glycerites up there right now. Glycerites are nice for people that don't want to have alcohol as a tincture base, and it makes it easier to give things to children as well. Glycerin comes in many different sizes. You don't have to get a big jug like this, but you want to look for one that's natural, that's organic, that's not. You want to look for one that's a food grade glycerin because they make some glycerins that are petroleum products for different applications, not something that you want to put in your body. So if you're looking for glycerin, you want to make sure that you find one that's good quality, something you can ingest. Glycerin is very sticky and syrupy and sweet, so it is not as easy to make a tincture out of. It's more messy and kind of fussy to strain out and do certain things with. So just be mindful of that when you're practicing with it. I also, this closet stays nice and cool because it is the front entryway. And so I don't have to worry about things spoiling too much in here. So it's a really nice, when you're storing your herbs, you want to think about that. You don't want them in the closet with the water heater that's really warm all year round because you're going to lose your quality of your herbs are going to lose their properties. I can also keep some of my made product in here. Some of my lotions and things that I have stored in there. I keep the dried herbs over there. And then on the other side of the shop, I have counters above and below. And these are divided up. I have all of my tinctures, once they're strained and labeled and cleaned up here. And if you can see on the very top row, I use that space for things that like extra storage, like some tins that I use frequently, my extra beeswax. That's all up in the top here. And that just makes it accessible for me and keeps it easy to get at. And I try and just use my space as well as I can. I keep bags and measuring things off to the side, so they're easy to grab. And I'm making something for a client if they're sitting right in front of me. I'm pretty efficient with being able to pull something together. And the lower cupboards here, I have all of my homeopathics. Just wanted to You've probably homeopathic remedies before. Many of them come in these little tubes. You can get them in larger sized containers. You want to keep your homeopathic herbs separated from, not homeopathic remedies, separate from your herbs and particularly separate from your essential oils because they will pick up the energy. from your essential oils and the stronger herbs, and that adulterates the homeopathic. So you want to keep those separate, and flower essences as well. So I keep my essential oils in this extra cupboard here. This is actually a ironing board, a wall hanging ironing board thing. Can you see that? So it gives me an extra little shelf to use, especially when I am in the midst of drying season. Drying season, it takes up a lot of space sometimes for me. You may not have to worry about such a space issue, but I needed to make as much room as I could. So what I've done is use bifold doors as the countertop on my cupboards on the base. And I have them so that they can flip out and make a bigger surface when I'm using my drying screens in the winter or when I'm making a bigger batch of product. So that's one way that you can think about creating some extra space for yourself when you're working to create a separate place for your herbs if you decide to get into it for more or larger. So I'm gonna get back here to the, before we go into our project set up in the other room at the kitchen because we need to use the stove. And so before we do that, I thought we'd go over the list of applications. So I'm gonna try and share my screen here. Let's see. So we got two lists. We're gonna go with the general one first here. I'll try and talk a little louder. Can you tell me why the sound is not good? Is it echoey? Or is it just me not being loud enough?
It's just a combination of the microphone not picking you up when you were moving around.
Okay.
I think more than anything. So now that you're seated, I think it'll be fine.
All right. So I'll be less moving around. I hope you can see the things well enough. I know I got to get a different way to do that piece of it. And I was going to try and do this class tonight using my phone, but I thought this would not be a good day for me to try and practice a new thing. So here we are. Anyway, so we're going to talk about forms of herbal applications. And basically, we have them broken down. I have them broken down into the broader categories of herbal remedy, essential oils, flower essences, or homeopathics, or plant spirit energy. So that's more of like accessing the plant energetically through meditation, um, intuition, and that sort of thing. Uh, Flower essences are made in a special way using the sunshine in a crystal bowl or a glass bowl. And what you're doing is you're infusing the essence of that flower into the water, and that becomes the beginning of what you make into your dose bottle. And there's a few steps that go along with making those flower essences that include titrating it down from that initial um, blend that you get from the sunshine, infusing those flower blossoms into the water. And you titrate that down many, many, many times and add a little tiny bit of alcohol as a preservative. And then that turns into your dosing bottle that you use in a homeopathic way. Essential oils are generally made from the flowering tops or the above ground leafy parts of the plant. Those are the parts of the plants that have the most volatile oils. It takes many, many, many pounds and sometimes tons of herb to distill out and get that highly concentrated essential oil. and they're very strong compared to herbal remedies. And that is, I think, something that people, it's good to learn about and know more about. There's um, teaching out there that says that 1 drop of essential oil is equal to 5 to 40 cups of tea, depending on the herb that is being used. And so when people are promoting ingesting herbs or using or ingesting essential oils or using them topically without diluting them, I have learned that that is not the best way to use that oil and serve your body without creating potential for side effects and even injury. So if you think about putting peppermint essential oil in your water, 'cause lots of people think that that's a good thing to do. 1 drop of peppermint essential oil is the equivalent to 20 drops of peppermint or 20 cups of peppermint tea. So if you had an upset stomach, would you really drink 20 cups of peppermint tea to try and alleviate it, as opposed to when you're putting a whole drop of oil in your water? It's like out of balance in the teachings that I have learned and how I practice, in my opinion. So being careful with that is just something to consider. Herbal remedies, they could be formulated from any part of the plant, depending on the plant. And you can make an herbal remedy out of many things: water, oil, alcohol, vinegar. You can do things with dried herbs that are just moistened a little and you eat as a steal. We're going to switch to a different share, and we're going to look at a different list. These are the 2 handouts that you got when you signed up for the class, and if you didn't get them, let us know and I'll send them along to you. So let's kind of go down this list here. So an infusion, you're probably all pretty familiar, hopefully, with many of these ways of infusing herbs, but we'll just talk about them. An infusion is a tea. Basically, you're steeping your herb in water for 5 to 10 minutes, and you're getting a nice water-based remedy. When you make a decoction, it's stronger than a tea. You actually put the herb into the water that you're going to be using, and this one is used often more with the woody or harder plants, sparks, things like that, that take some time to absorb that water and release their magic into the menstruum for you. So you're going to be cooking this for a little bit longer. That being said, when you're making a decoction, you don't really want to be boiling the heck out of your herbs. You want to just keep it at just a very low simmer, kind of it's called a champagne boil. Do you know what that is? Where there's just little tiny bubbles on the bottom of the pan right before it starts to heat up and come up through the water. That's the perfect temperature to make a decoction. And you're going to simmer that for maybe 15 minutes to sometimes up to an hour, depending on what it is you're using. So glycerites we talked about a little bit earlier. Glycerites can be made by themselves with just straight glycerin. Lots of people will put a little bit of alcohol in there to preserve it for longer, but depending on how fast you're going to use that glycerite, that's not necessarily needed and sometimes not wanted. So glycerites combine really well with water, vinegar, and alcohol to make different forms of taking it. So it's a really versatile and user-friendly kind of remedy. It's just not always so user-friendly when you're making your remedy with it, because it can be messy. So vinegar and wine, used by themselves or in combination, over time there's many recipes for really good medicinal wines out there that are tasty and also helpful. Tinctures, we talked about a little bit. The way that I showed you today was just to make it simple. You can get really intricate and do lots of formal measuring if you're wanting to do something that's more commercial or be a little bit more specific with your amount. It's always good to document whatever version of making a tincture you decide to do, how much you put in, how long did you let it steep. So just get yourself a journal and start keeping track of that process, because as you learn and go on and say, well, I made this tincture for this long and boy, it really was effective. And then next time I made it, it didn't seem to be as strong. Um, those are things that you can track and then figure out what was it that made it different. Did the season, was it more dry? Did the plant not have, was it not as oily? Was it, um, too wet? Did the plant not develop as many flowers for whatever reason? So lots of reasons to keep a journal as to what you're making and what you're doing. Um, let's see. Can't quite get this to move up. I'm going to keep going down the list here. I'm going to look at mine over here. Oils, herbs infused into an oil base. We go into the kitchen. I'll show you. I have another cupboard that I keep all of my oils in separately for when I'm making salves and lotions. And I keep those out of this closet here and keep them stored separately, mostly because of location and where I'm using the product. And that's one thing to think about when you are preparing things on your own at home, is that you want to kind of designate your tools, designate your measuring cups, designate your strainer. Um, just keep all of those things that you're making your herbal stuff with separate from the things that you're using to make your meals and do your cooking with. And that keeps you a little bit more in line with some of the kind of recommendations and regulations that a formal um, professional kitchen or a professional operation would have you do. You want to always be as close to what the regulations would be for like the FDA and like food grade products and things, especially if you're going to be sharing outside of your home. Um, so salves and balms and lotions are made by using your infused oil to and putting some kind of thickening agent in there to make it more solid. I use beeswax as my base. I really like that. I can get beeswax from some really awesome local beekeepers that I know, and it's just been something that I've used. I have had very few people over the years that have been doing this that react to beeswax, whereas some of the other kinds of oils and butters and things that people will like to use, like jojoba or um, boy, there's just so many out there that are fun to play with and have really nice properties, but sometimes people can be more tend to have allergic reactions. So I have found myself that beeswax is a really nice base to use and easy to measure and work with. So um, liniments are syrups that, not syrups, I'm skipping down. Liniments are made like a tincture, but they have rubbing alcohol as part of the menstruum. They can have that makes the herb absorb into the skin in a different way, brings it to the body in a different way. And you need to make sure if you're making a liniment that you have it very carefully labeled, because they are only for external use if they have that rubbing alcohol component in them. So let's see. I think it's this. I can't get my list to move up. So hopefully you have your handout in hand. We've got syrups and honeys. Usually we put syrup or honey into something to make it taste better. Um, when you're making fire cider, for instance, and you're making that really activating hot vinegar with horseradish and cayenne pepper and raw apple cider vinegar and onions and garlic and things like that. You infuse those into the vinegar for several weeks, and then when you strain that out, you actually add a portion of honey in it, depending on like a quarter part of honey to um, the one whole part of the vinegar that you make, and stir it all together, and that really makes a really nice fire cider. Um, but you can actually infuse herbs into straight honey and make medicinal honeys that are fabulous. Things like ginger, things like elderberry, anything that you really want to put into the honey and turn it into that as a medicinal honey. It's a really great idea, and they can be tasty. And then you can add it into food or add it on top of your toast or things like that. And it's just another way, of kind of a fun way to get your herbs into you. You could infuse nettles into your honey and make a really nice, nourishing, mineral-based little sweet vitamin for the day. So those are things you can think about doing, and that's easy to do. Um, Oxymels are a mixture of honey and vinegar. So you mix the honey and the vinegar together. It makes it thinner. It creates the different set of properties by the two menstruums blending together and bringing their own basic properties of goodness to that base, and then you put your herbs in there. It makes the remedy thinner to use and easier to strain out, because it's often kind of difficult to strain the herbs back out of the honey. Um, but the vinegar also helps to make that a little bit easier as well. Um, Electuaries are herbs that are powdered and then made into a mass with some kind of moisture that makes them want to bind together. You can use water. You could also infuse a tea with some herbs that would match the herb that you're powdering to make the remedy even more potent. You could use oil, and then you make it into like a little paste. And then you just make little balls out of it. You kind of put them down there and let them dry. You can dry them by air, or you can put them in a turn the oven on to warm, and then turn it off, and then stick them in there and dry them out, just like you would dehydrate any sort of food or something in the oven. And once they um, get dried like that, then you can store them in a jar, in the freezer, in the fridge, and you can take them. So a good reason to do something like that, if someone was having, for instance, an ulcer or some upper GI problems, you could make uh, an electuary out of slippery elm, for instance, and you could um, also use as part of that remedy, you could make the liquid that you would bind it together with out of calendula and plantain and maybe some marshmallow root, which would make it more thick. And then you would blend that all together and make those little pastilles and use that instead of a Tums or a Rolade. And I have used this over the years with people with stomach issues, and can actually, if they're consistent with taking the remedy, it can really actually help them get off of something like an acid blocker and heal their stomach lining and not have to use that anymore. It's a good way to get address an issue that way. So for topical uses, you've always got your poultices and your fomentations and your hot packs. And again, that's pretty much making an infusion either with the oil or with the water, of whatever herbs you're wanting to put on for soothing skin or hydrating or healing a burn or doing something for pain. And you're wrapping that in a cloth and putting it on and covering it up. And um, many different ways to be doing that. So you want to think about a poultice being the that pack with the herbs included, and compress is just the cloth soaked in whatever infusion you made and just apply it as the liquid in the so other ways that you can think about making a remedy that gets somebody to share and take are putting things into capsules. That's very fussy and a lot of work. Making those little pastilles or the electuaries is actually easier and but you can get a capsule filler, and if you're into powdered herbs and things like that, you can get pretty fast at getting it to work, or you get a helper and you have them do that part of your job. Making lozenges is like making hard candy, and if that appeals to you, they can be very useful because you can store them for a long time, and people will take them because you can make them sweet and get them into people's bodies, especially kids. Sometimes that's a good thing to do. That for me is not one of my favorite things to do. I have a hard time standing there and stirring, so it's not something that I do very often. Other ways to get herbs into kids is to, or people that are fussy and have a taste aversion to many things, is to put them in things like jello or popsicles. And making flower essences is always a nice way to use herbs to get people that are working on emotional issues um, to have another layer of something that you can have them take and have them have with them that can be really supportive, in addition to maybe something like more of a specific nervine for what's going on with them. So, do we have any questions so far about what we've talked about? I'm not watching the chat much at all tonight, so
Oh, yes, lots of questions.
all right, let's do a few minutes of that.
Okay, sounds good. I'm going to go work my way back to the top. Does light affect the leaves? So this was when we first got started looking at your
The dried herbs, yes,
yep. So
yep.
should herbs be kept in glass jars or dark jars? Pantry with light or dark?
Yep, yep, good question. So you can see mine were all in the closet and the door was shut, and I'm very careful to make sure the light is off and the doors are shut. I don't leave them wide open when I'm working in here. I try and get stuff in and out. Um, I might leave it open for an hour or something like that. But yes, it's a definite impactor in terms of storage length and quality of your herbs. So a lot of people, if they're using glass jars that you can see through, will actually just stick that jar right in a paper bag. If they don't have an opportunity to keep it in a cool cupboard, that's another way you can do it. So dark jars are great, but you have to make sure you're checking things. And that sometimes can be a little bit of a counter effective, is that if you're not going through your herbs and using them frequently enough to um, keep refreshing what you're using, that things can go bad and you don't notice it. You might sometimes moisture can get in there just because maybe something didn't dry well enough, or um, for whatever reason it got damp where you're storing it, and then it's easier to tell if you can take a look through the clear glass or go in there and check through. Um, just keeping an eye on it and for me, I go through a lot of things, and so these bigger jars work good for what I do.
Okay, is a tincture the same as an essential oil?
No, nope. An essential oil is a distilled process that takes large amounts of herbs, um, heats heats them in a certain way so the oils and the constituents that go up into steam, and then they collect that steam in one side, and that becomes um, what we call a hydrosol. And then the oil gets separated out of that by this process of distillation, and they collect that oil. It's a super concentrated um, herbal remedy. And a tincture is simply an herb um, of whatever part that you are using infused into an alcohol base.
Okay, what kind of oils do you use and what kind of vinegars do you use?
I always use raw apple cider vinegar for um, like medicinal remedies because it's probiotic. It's got all kinds of good vitamins and minerals and many good properties all on its own. It's its own remedy by itself. Um, but I also like to use for like more culinary sorts of applications, white wine vinegar or rice vinegar to infuse things like berries and mints and just fun, tasty things that then you can take and use on a salad or in your cooking. So, but for the medicinal remedies, always apple cider vinegar, raw.
Okay, and then what about
Oh, no
oils?
oil. I use grapeseed oil. I'm just solid across with the grapeseed oil. I like it because it doesn't have a real high odor. Like olive oil can have kind of a strong odor as well as some of the other oils you can use, which are great. But I just think with a lot of scent sensitivities and things like that out there, it's nice to have a really neutral oil. Rapeseed oil has a high heat threshold. Not that I'm doing anything at a high heat at all, but I feel like it's more stable in that way. And it also has a really high natural vitamin E content. And vitamin E is a natural preservative. So I feel like it lends a little bit more shelf life to some of the topicals and the oils that I prepare.
Hannah would like to know, where do you get all of your herbs? Do you harvest them yourself or buy them? And if you buy them, from where?
I do a lot of my own growing. We also have lots of really great wild space and woods and forests around Duluth for those of you that don't live here. And we do a lot of foraging. I pretty much forage wherever I go. If we go on a trip or anything, I'm looking around to see what's there. And then if you're doing that, you want to remember all those mindful foraging rules we talked about in the first couple of sessions about distance from the road and making sure the place you're picking is clean and stuff like that. But if I run out of something or I have a bad season for certain things, or it's just an herb that doesn't grow locally that I really like the properties of, I like to order from first of all the people I know. There's many good herbalists out there, Black Locust Farms, Anahata Herbals. And if you want more references, you can direct email me and I will give you a list. But in terms of more commercial companies that I feel like are quality, there's Pacific Botanicals, there's Star West Botanicals, there is Frontier has some nice products. They've been around for a very long time. Mountain Rose Herbs, very good, wonderful company, and they also do lots of teaching things and give you good like learning information. So
Sorry about that, I was muted.
Aha.
Okay, the last question was from Uma, which was, which herbs can be used for the different applications?
Yeah, and that's like just there's so many herbs out there. We just need to learn about them, and because most of them can be used for just about all of the applications. You just have to learn their properties and figure out why would I want to use lemon balm as an oil? Why would I want to use prickly ash as a topical? So that's more the case of just learning the different herbs and pick one and research it, or pick a condition that you have and then look up the herbs that might benefit it and then go from there. So that being said, we've got, ooh, boy, I'm talking a lot or something. We're going to talk about our herb for the day here is lemon balm. So this is some lemon balm growing. Not mine, but mine looks a lot like this when it is growing out in my yard. I'm going to show you a little bit closer up picture. Oops. So you can get a good idea of the leaves. You can see that a lemon balm is a member of the mint family, and you can see it's a little bit more rounded of a leaf compared to certain like peppermints and spearmints, but it definitely has that mint family look to it. The square stem, the tall alternating leaves, and it grows. It can grow up to probably 18 inches tall. Um, it's got that minty smell when it's growing, but it also has kind of a soury smell, a lemony smell. Lemon balm can be used in all these applications. Now we're going to travel, and I'm going to take you into the kitchen where we've got some stuff set up for us. So here we go. Now, see, okay? Can you see that all right?
Yep, we can see you fine. It's, if you're stepping behind the camera, though, we won't be able to hear you very well.
I'm going to stay right here. I just want to know if you can see everything.
Yep, you're all good.
Okay, so we're going to talk about lemon balm. And lemon balm is good for antiviral. It's a really strong nerve line. It's good for soothing people's nerves. It's great for helping with hyperthyroidism. It's really used abundantly as a cold medicine. It helps with calming down agitated taste, are cooling and sour. Got in my book here. And it's good for nervousness. It's good for anxiety. It's great for helping people calm down.
Sorry to interrupt you, Stacy. We're having a really hard time picking up what you've been saying.
All right. It's good for the nervous system. It's good for helping people sleep. It's great for anxiety, headaches, upset stomach. It's a wonderful antiviral for internal like colds and flus and hot, excited tissue states. It's great as an antiviral topically. It's really specific to the herpes virus. So topically for cold sores, and also the herpes that people have in their genitalia, it can do those surgeries for them off. The volatile oils that are in there have a specific properties actually address that herpes virus. So it's a really good one for that. It helps with soothing your stomach. It's very digestive herb. It helps to decrease fevers. Um, it's used for male and female issues with the hormonal cascade. It can help with hot flashes and fertility and virility. So it's, and I think that's because of the way it affects the nerves. Again, for skin, it's great for sores and stings and open cuts. Very soothing and for a rinse or a tea. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you some different applications. Now, I'm sorry that this isn't working out as good as I thought it would for the people that are having trouble hearing. So I'm just going to keep going and we'll do the best we can. I'm talking a little bit louder. Maybe that will help. Right now, what I have here for you is some beeswax. This is a 1/2 ounce. We're going to heat it up on the stove. You want to heat it up kind of slow. You don't want it to get too hot. I have a 1/2 cup of lemon balm infused grapeseed oil. And the way that I infuse oil is in a crock pot. You have to find a crock pot that has keep warm on it. If you infuse herbs in a crock pot that only goes to the low setting, it's too hot. Lemon balm actually is best used fresh. It has a lot more of its oils and properties when it's fresh. When it dries, it loses some of that. So it's an herb that drying it is good, and you want to have some around dried for the winter time. If you don't have space in your freezer to keep enough frozen, but it's one that you want to replenish every year. You can tell the difference by the end of the season and in the spring that it's lost some of its the vigor and its smell. And so that's one that you're going to want to replenish every year. So we're just heating up the wax here. And while we're waiting for it to melt, because you want to melt your wax first when you're making a salve. I'll show you over here. The lemon balm is dried. You can see it's still really nice and green, but when I open it up, it has lost quite a bit of its smell. So I'll be looking forward to spring. And the lemon balm's nice. It starts to grow early. It grows through the whole season, and it's one that's really easy to grow in a pot if you don't have a lot of space to grow it. You can, again, use it in all those applications that we talked about as a tea or topically. So we're just making our smoke here. And it takes just a couple of minutes. My ratio for salves wax to oil is about 1 ounce of wax to 1 cup of oil, whatever that blends may be. And that makes a really nice salve that's not too dense, but it's not too loose. So you can put it in a container and put it in your purse, and it's not gonna ooze out if it gets too warm or something like that. But you're still able to get it out of whatever tin that you're using. If I'm going to make something more like a chapstick, I'll probably add another 1/2 ounce of oil or wax to the oil, because then it's a little bit more solid in that tube for you to use. So, and a lot of things like lotion bars, that are made with wax, they are a much denser ratio. When I make a lotion, I use that same wax to oil ratio for the base, and then I use for that amount of measure for 1 cup of oil and 1 ounce of wax, I use 10 ounces of distilled water. And basically, making lotion is a lot like making mayonnaise. If you've ever done that from scratch, you need to emulsify the oil with the water. And a really nice way to do that is to use a hand blender, the kind that like is an immersion blender. And it works really slick and it's easy to clean up. It's way easier than using a blender where you're having to scoop stuff out of. So I've melted the wax. And I just wanted you to see this because when you put the oil in, it cools it off. And it gets kind of thick again. So don't be alarmed if you do that. The oil goes in there and then you just put it back on the heat and pretty soon that will diffuse down into the wax. And it's a really nice way to get it incorporated. Now at this point is where you would add, if you wanted to put some essential oils in there, a remedy, or you wanted to, no, that would be it. I like to keep a lot of things unscented for people, but when I am making certain things, I will put essential oil in there to help the remedy be a little bit more specific or stronger. And I'm going to just try and tip this down so you can see the things that I'm using. Okay, pretty much. So now those will take about 10 minutes to make get solid again, and then you have a salve. It's a pretty easy way to start experimenting with topicals. I order my tins from Specialty Bottle. They have pretty good prices. There's several good container companies out there that are comparable in price. Frund Container, Freund, is a good company as well. And I think they're actually like, somehow they overlap. Like Frund is the bigger company and Specialty Bottle kind of gets some of their things. So check prices. Containers can be expensive, and you can look for sales, and maybe if you're looking to get a larger amount, you can find a friend that wants to go in on them because it's always less expensive if you can buy something in bulk. So when I started out, I used to have some friends at the time that had little babies, and I used a lot of baby food jars back in the beginning. So small containers are nice sizes so that your things stay fresh. Once your salves are done, again, you want to keep them in something cool, like my front closet. Some people will separate a spot in the door of the closet or the refrigerator to keep their lotions and their salves and their oils. If your home is quite warm, you want to maybe keep your oils in the refrigerator as well. I wanted to talk a little bit about, I know you all probably have a variety of tea infusers and teapots and things like that. that you use, and I was going to show you real quick here how to make a tea bag out of a coffee filter. So we'll make some lemon balm tea. So here's just your plain old regular unbleached coffee filter. I'm going to take a nice amount of the lemon balm. If you have something that's kind of woody, you're going to want to make sure that you kind of break up those little twigs and things. Otherwise, that will pop through and wreck your tea bag. So here's the coffee filter, and now you're going to take it, you're going to fold it in half like so. Then you're going to fold down the top edge once, at least twice, depending on if your herb is very fluffy or smaller, you might be able to fold it down 3 times. But when you fold it twice, it seals that edge and it keeps the herb from falling out. Then you're going to turn it sideways and you're going to fold it up in half this way. Once you got that pocket, there's your flow through bag right there. You're going to fold the top down like the top of a paper airplane. If you wanted to get fancy, this is where you could get a little tag and put a string on there and label your tea bag. Then you're going to fold that down one more time, and then again, and put a staple and drop the stapler on your foot, and then there's your tea bag. So for people that you're sharing herbs with that don't want to fuss around with loose tea and straining things and maybe not have a tea ball, or you're just trying to introduce something, or maybe you're going on a trip and you want to get some of your tea that you like to take with you, you can make yourself a bunch of tea bags and toss them in your purse and you're ready to go. And it's just another way that you can make your herbs easy to use and share, and it doesn't take too long and it's not expensive. Buying the tea bags that you can seal at the top that are already pre-made, they're probably about 50 times the price of one of these coffee filters. So there you go.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That's a fun trick. We have a few more questions.
Okay.
Miriam asked, how long do dry herbs last in an airtight container?
It depends on the herb, and it really does depend on the heat and the light and all of those things. Some herbs can last for 3-4 years or longer if you store them right. And some herbs, especially it's the ones with the volatile oils that often, you need to replenish year to year to year. So it's about looking at them, tasting them, smelling them, and just learning how they are when they're freshly dried and getting to know that process.
She wondered if they can order herbs from you.
I'm not like, Pacific Botanicals and have big, huge stores. You saw what I have. So I don't sell like big pounds of anything, but I do sell, ounces of things and particular remedies. I make herb blends for people all the time. So, but if you wanted something larger than that, and then I would direct you to one of those.
Margot mentioned that maybe a bottle warmer secondhand would be a good idea for melting some of those different remedies.
Oh, that, like from infusing the oil, that could be. I don't know like the temperature, what the temperature would get to on one of those. But that's a kind of a really good idea. I don't. If you want to also think about things that are easy to clean, things that don't have nooks and crannies and things, and being able to clean things easily. So good idea.
Brittany was wondering if you can make tinctures and other medicinal items for sale if you have a business, but you are not an herbalist.
Um, we should probably talk about more about the rules and regulations. Maybe we'll look at that for the next class because you can. Um, one of the things that you need to know about labeling things is you never want to um, like say what it's for. And I know that it sounds kind of silly, but if you are saying that this herb is for a sinus infection, that means that you're making a diagnosis. You're saying that you're talking out of your scope of practice. So when you're thinking about selling something to someone, you want to make sure that you are only labeling the herb and the name and your batch and those kinds of things and not writing down. You can recommend and you can have cards on the side that say has been used for such and so, or um, folk history, or empirical evidence supports that elderberry is good, is for antiviral. Lots of people know that, but you can't put that on your elderberry bottle that this is an antiviral. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think it does.
Okay.
Next question. When you are infusing oil, what is the proportion of plant to oil?
That goes back to the same thing about making the tincture. You can do measuring, and it just depends on what properties you're trying to get from the finished product that you're making. I have a topical that is a really nice blend I call Fantastic Four. It has mullein, Solomon seal, St. John's wort, and comfrey in it, and it's for um, nerve pain, cartilage, connective tissue, joints, tendons, ligaments, that kind of soft tissue in the jointy areas. And I usually make that equal parts. So however big of a batch I'm making, I use 1 cup of each, for instance, if I'm going to make 3 quarts. So it's all about what are the properties that you're looking to get out of the herbs, and then what balance do you want between the herbs.
Someone asked, how do we make the infused oil for this salve?
So you can, if you get a very low temperature, again, that low temperature, you want to think about like 100 degrees. That's plenty warm. You can do that in that crock pot. I will infuse oils up to 3 or 4 days. You want to give it time. You can do it just in a jar. You can put the herbs in the jar with the oil and put it in the cupboard and make it like a tincture, but you want to really watch it, because if you're using particularly fresh herbs, you're going to want to make sure that those herbs don't start to go off in the oil. So that can be a little bit more, you have to pay attention over a longer period of time. But those you can infuse for up to a couple of months and then strain them out and use them. If you are lucky enough to have like a wood stove, you can put stuff up above behind on the back of the wood stove and let things infuse that way certain times of the year. So it it just depends.
Okay, and the last comment we had was someone mentioned using a wax melter for like body waxing and facial wax.
For Milton the wax to make.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't know how hot those get, but might be an interesting experiment. Someone that has one of those do that and get back to us.
There you go. Now you guys have homework. Awesome. Well, we've had a lot of people say thank you and thank you for the information. Let's see. Oh, Nicola says that a body wax melting machine has multiple temperatures, so you can find the one that works best.
Yeah, you definitely would want to put it down on something very, very low. I didn't really drop it on my foot.
I would have. It would have hit me in the foot.
All
right.
Say one more thing. I forgot. Let's see. It was about the wax. Oh, I lost it.
Well, now you have everybody's email address so that you can go ahead and send it to everyone at some point here.
All right. Oh, I know what it was. I'm sorry for the I promised to try and get some better technology so that we can do more demos with more ease.
You know what? There are microphones that are wireless that could work. So that might be something to look into, and they're not expensive. So that could be an option.
Yeah, I got one. This computer, unfortunately, wasn't as good of a deal as I thought it was going to be, and it has some audio limitations. So,
Bummer.
I know.
Yeah.
But that just means I get to get a new computer sometime.
Well, and then by the time we hit fall, we'll be in person and you'll have me working the audio for you. So it'll all be good.
I can't wait for the day.
All right, everybody, thank you again so much for taking time out of your Tuesday evening to join us. Absolutely. And again, if you would like the recording, please reach out to Stacy. You should have received the email from me with Stacy's direct email address, so you can ask her for the recording. If you are looking to get previous recordings, you can reach out to me. I just won't be able to get them to you until sometime next week. So do know that. I'll put my email in the chat one more time. Whoops.
And also please know that I have a very full schedule with some unexpected family caregiving emergencies this week as well. And so I will do my best to get to the emails and I'll make sure that I'm finding everybody and getting back to you as soon as I can, for sure, by the end of next week.
Perfect. All right, Stacy's email address. Let me add that too. All right, that is in the chat now also. All right, everybody, thank you again for attending. Thank you for your participation and your questions. Through some audio difficulties. Stuff happens. Technology is great until it's not. So we'll see you again the last Tuesday of the month of April for class number 6. And oh, you don't see my email? It should be just above Stacy's. I put that one in there. It's just my name, J. Gilbertson at wholefoods.coop. Try it again. There it goes. So yes. And then otherwise, please feel free to check out our website or check us out through Eventbrite for other classes. We have a full list of classes going into the summer months. So please take some time and sign up for those classes. And again, they're all free and they're all going to be virtual. So with that said, everyone, enjoy the rest of your evening and we'll see you next month.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you again, Stacy.